Hi, welcome back, everyone. This is your friend Greedy Fanfics, bringing you another fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the second part of What If Deku Had a Twin Brother. All credit for this story goes to Chocolate Sisterling, so please support them by checking out the link in the description for more details. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. The air felt thick and suffocating. Silence dominated until Mikumo shifted and caused the chair to creak. He winced at the sound and glanced at the two men across the table. Mr. Aizawa had a serious expression that told him nothing. The teacher sipped on the coffee in front of him silently as the smell of the bitter drink filled the room. The other man was a detective named Successor. His face was more focused, but still did not give anything away. Mikumo glanced around the room. An interrogation room, and he was on the wrong side of the table. A drop of sweat dripped down the side of his face despite the chilly air. I don't understand why I'm here. I already was interviewed after the incident at Kamino, Mikumo said. We have some follow-up questions, the detective stated. He clicked his pen and scribbled something on the clipboard in front of him that Mikumo could not read. Aizawa rested his folded hands on the table and leaned in. Let's start with when was the last time you had contact of any kind with Izuku? Before the training camp. I tried texting and calling since then, but nothing has gone through. The two men on the other side of the table glanced at each other, as if sending some sort of secret message. Mikumo gripped his hands together hard under the table. His fingers ran over the scars there from breaking his hands during the sports festival. The rough texture was almost enough to distract himself from the tightness in his chest. Detective Successor asked the next question. Were you aware that your brother was part of the League of Villains? Of course not, Mikumo protested loudly. The men's faces remained stony. If I had known, I would have told someone. I would have tried to save him. You believe he needs saving, Aizawa stated with a tone of disbelief. He looked like a willing enough participant during the raid. Can you really say you don't believe he wanted to be there? Mikumo cut off. He remembered all the things Izuku went through. The bullying and neglect. Plus there was the fact that he was turned out on the street with nowhere to go. Perhaps all it had taken was the villains offering him a home. Mikumo could not bring himself to admit such doubts. Izuku is not a villain. He always wanted to be a hero. I don't believe he would willingly join them unless he had no other choice. He kept his voice steady despite his own doubt in the statement. Something shifted in the face of the detective. He gave a meaningful look to Aizawa and the teacher's eyes narrowed. Mikumo swallowed hard and tried to sit still. Did he say something wrong? Izuku has been through a lot, Mikumo quickly added. He's quirkless, and that led to a lot of people hurting him. He probably just felt like there was nowhere else to turn. I'm sure he would never hurt anyone. Aizawa and the detective still did not look convinced. Why would he not turn to you or your mother? Successor asked. Mikumo could not meet their gaze. He looked down to his fidgeting hands as he continued to trace over the scars he got from his quirk. I was gone. With all the time I spent at UA for training and everything, we barely saw each other. His brows pulled together in a frown. As for my mother, things changed after I got a quirk and Izuku didn't. She didn't really pay attention to Izuku anymore and… He trailed off, not wanting to tell the rest, but they really should know. Izuku stopped going to school because of the bullying and eventually dropped out due to lack of attendance. When that happened and they notified Mom, she kicked him out of the house. Silence returned to the room. Mikumo did not dare to look at the faces of the men across from him. He did not want to know what their reaction was to his quirkless brother being kicked out on the street. A long sigh broke the tense atmosphere. Detective Successor clicked his pen and spoke with a tone of finality. We will contact the proper authorities to investigate your mother's parenting. If you have any contact with Izuku in any way, we need you to contact us and tell us. Of course I will, Mikumo nearly yelled in response. I want to get him out of there, and I want to save Kaken. We will also be keeping a close eye on you, Aizawa added. Yes, sir. Mikumo muttered as they all stood from the table. Something told him this was not the end, and it would take a lot more than one talk to prove they could trust him. Weeks. It had been weeks since the heroes failed to rescue Katsuki, and he was starting to give up hope. Maybe Deku was not so crazy after all when he claimed that the heroes would only keep looking as long as it was in the news cycle. Deku had shown him some of the stories that criticized the heroes for their failures. None of them mentioned ongoing efforts. Of course, that might just be the articles that the nerds selected. Izuku was smart like that. "Good morning, Kaken," Deku called out as he entered the dingy little room Katsuki was kept in. He reached down and unlocked the cuffs that encased Katsuki's hands and forearms. With his new freedom of movement, Katsuki stretched his hands up over his head, bringing a satisfying pop. He rolled his shoulders and allowed his muscles to relax. It was a fairly new development that they gave him this freedom, and Katsuki was not sure how to feel about it. On the one hand, it gave him a chance to try and escape. On the other hand, he could tell that the reason he had this freedom was because Izuku was starting to trust him again, and Katsuki did not want to break that trust. At least, not unless he had a definite way to escape. "Would you like a shower?" Deku asked. Katsuki's head snapped to look at the other boy, his mouth open in shock. Katsuki had not been able to shower since he came here. The best he had gotten was a wet rag to wipe himself down with and a clean, though worn, change of clothes. Izuku noticed his obvious surprise and chuckled softly. "I was able to get permission for you just this once. Though if you don't cause trouble, they will probably let you do it more regularly." "How'd you manage that?" Katsuki asked softly. It was weird how he rarely felt like yelling at Deku these days. "I promise to take full responsibility for you. I will have to stay right outside the curtain to make sure you don't try anything. Sorry I couldn't get them to agree to more privacy." Katsuki just nodded. He could deal with not having total privacy. At least they did not require him to be literally watched the whole time. Unfortunately, Izuku taking responsibility meant that Katsuki was not willing to run. Doing so would likely get the nerd killed, and Katsuki would never be able to forgive himself for that. It was amazing how much difference something as small as being clean made. The warm water helped Katsuki to relax, and having clean clothes allowed him to finally stop feeling gross. Deku escorted him back to his room as soon as he was finished. "How are you doing really, Kaken?" he asked as soon as the door was shut. Katsuki shrugged. "Better now. Any chance I can get some fresh air?" Regret and guilt were written clearly across Deku's face as he answered. "I'm sorry, Kaken. I don't think they'd let that happen unless you were an actual member." "Are you an actual member?" At this point it was hard to tell what role Izuku played in the league. Deku shrugged. "I still have not committed any acts of villainy, unless you count being there during your capture. On the other hand, since I was seen there with them, everyone assumes I am a member. I'm sure the heroes would love to arrest me and lock me away." Guilt settled once more in Katsuki's gut. He wished there was a way to make things right with his former friend. For now maybe he just needed to be here for him. When they arrived at the empty warehouse, Izuku tucked himself away in one of the dark corners. He knew they were here to meet some potential new member that Twice had found, but Izuku did not really want to be here. He wanted to be back at the base with Kaken. He knew that his friend was close to giving up on Hero Society. He just needed a few more pushes. The door opened and Izuku frowned. Twice walked in with some guy in a weird mask that kind of reminded him of drawings he'd seen of plague doctors from the Middle Ages. But that was not what bothered Izuku. He could feel others in and around the building. It seemed that this visitor did not come alone. If only there was a way he could signal that to Shigaraki. Shigaraki recognized the man. "He's what you call Yakuza. The young leader of the Shai Hasaikai," he informed them. Shigaraki and the apparent Yakuza leader talked back and forth and tensions were high. Izuku did not need his quirk to feel the hostility in the air. Overhaul, as the man in the plague mask was called, was going on about the supposed strengths of each group. "Put yourself under me. Make me your new leader and I'll show you exactly how to use the right tools." No one liked that plan. "Leave," Shigaraki ordered. Then things snapped. Magna leapt forward and attacked Overhaul. With a single touch, the magnetism user exploded in a mist of blood. Izuku felt his breath catch in his lungs. He could not move from his corner. As the other league members moved to attack, Izuku was frozen. Even after months with the villains, he had never seen anyone die in front of him. Compress lost his arm and yelled. Shigaraki attacked but was blocked by a different Yakuza member jumping in between them. The new man turned to dust. The walls were broken down and all those other people Izuku had sensed were standing in the room ready to fight. But the fight didn't happen. Killing each other isn't productive. Overhaul stated far too casually. Izuku felt no regret in him for killing Magna or losing his own man. A death on both sides. Let's take a breather. We'll cool our heads and try again later. I owe your side an arm. The others wanted to chase after the Yakuza villain, but Shigaraki stopped them. Izuku knew this was the right choice. Their opponents were far too calm and confident. They knew they could beat the League if it came down to it right now. On top of that, they did not seem to value the lives of their companions. Attacking might take out a few of the lowlifes, but Overhaul would get away. They needed to wait for a better opportunity. Just before they left the building, Overhaul paused and looked back to where Izuku still sat in the corner. The disgust that boiled under the surface when he looked at others was missing as he looked at Izuku. Instead, there was a strange interest. It caused a terrified shiver to run down Izuku's spine. As the League of Villains finally left, Izuku heard Shigaraki mutter, "I'll make you pay." It was a sentiment Izuku shared. It may take time, but they would make Overhaul and the Shai Hasaikai pay. So what's Handyman going to do? Katsuki asked after Izuku told him about the warehouse. Izuku shrugged. He did decide to call and set up a meeting with Overhaul at their base, but I don't know what his plan is. I do know he won't let this go without payback. He did kill one of ᴅᴇᴜ's men, right? Wasn't that payback? A pawn for a pawn? Izuku shook his head. You may not believe this, but Shigaraki actually cares about us. The people in his party, as he describes it, his companions, are valuable to him. For Overhaul, that man really was a pawn. He cared nothing about his death. No way would Shigaraki accept that as even. Izuku studied Katsuki as he carefully added the next part. Would you have called it even if I was the one killed? He did not even have to manipulate Katsuki's emotions to get the response he hoped for. Of course not. Kaken shouted. And I would never forgive that jerk if he so much as hurt you. I would blast him away. The former hero student calmed his voice a little as he clenched his fists and stared down at the floor. But I'm a hero student and you're my friend. For both of those reasons I would not stop until I took that villain down. I'm glad to have you as my friend again, Kaken. Izuku smiled as he leaned slightly against the other boy. Guiding Kaken back to this point had been a challenging process, but so worth it. Rarely did Izuku need to do much to keep Katsuki from even thinking of trying to run. He had conditioned Katsuki to associate so much guilt with those thoughts that even without chains and as the only ones in the building, the supposed hero student made no attempt to escape. Soon, staying next to Izuku would be all Katsuki cared about. Studying quirks was a hobby of Izuku's, as was researching. He had gathered everything he could on the known members of the Shai Hasaikai before being sent with Toga and twice to their base. That knowledge is what allowed him to pick up on the fact that one of the top members, Nemoto Shin, was using their quirk to force the League members to reveal their quirks. He could force his victims to answer any question truthfully. When it came Izuku's turn, he was a little more capable of controlling his words. He just had to make sure they were all true. I was diagnosed quirkless at a young age. I was bullied for it relentlessly, and even hated by my mother for it. I know how to fight and I'm good with computers, but when it comes to quirks... Izuku shrugged. I don't have one you can use. And it was true. They could not use Izuku's new quirk. Overhaul's eyes stayed fixed on Izuku and a part of him wished he could not feel the fascination that bordered on obsession from the man. Quirkless are so rare in today's world. Especially so young. The Yakuza boss stood and approached Izuku. His eyes scanned the teen's body in an appraising manner. You might be useful for completing our project. I'm sure you would be happy to help, right? There was a threat hidden in his voice, and Izuku noticed the man's hand twitch as if in reminder that all it took was one small touch for him to kill. I would be happy to help. Izuku kept his voice steady. This man was not showing a desire to kill like Izuku had seen before. He wanted Izuku for something, and admittedly Izuku was a bit curious what. As long as it won't cause me or the League any harm. After all, we're only here on loan to cement relations. A huff was the only direct response Izuku got from the Yakuza leader. Overhaul turned to one of his subordinates. Take him to Eri's room. I have a feeling they will get along quite well. Izuku followed the subordinate through winding hallways to a locked door. The door was opened and Izuku was shoved through into the dark room lit only by the light from the open door. At first glance the room looked nice. The walls were painted with bright pictures and there were toy boxes surrounding a large bed. But the darkness and the trembling of the lump in the center of the bed told a different story. On top of that, Izuku could feel the overwhelming fear and despair of whoever was here. Eri, get up. The Yakuza member calls out. Slowly a head of white hair appeared from the bed. Red eyes peered out and focused on Izuku. With a gasp, a little girl popped out the rest of the way from the covers. It's you, she whispered. There was the tiniest bit of hope as the girl's fear subsided just a little. Izuku could not bring himself to crush that hope even though he had no idea why the girl was reacting like this. With the kindest smile he could muster, Izuku moved to sit next to the girl on the bed. You know me? He asked. She nodded. From the other day when I went outside. She reached forward and touched Izuku's hand. Your hands were so kind. Normally Izuku would assume that someone who he did not remember meeting had met his brother, but that seemed unlikely when talking about a girl kept under lock and key by a criminal organization. On the other hand, she did say outside. Outside? Like outside the compound? Eri nodded. In the alley? That other guy called you Deku. Is that your name? It really must have been his brother then. Izuku debated for a moment what he should tell the girl. He gave her another kind smile. That must have been my brother. Izuku heard the door click shut, and the room fell into near total darkness. His eyes adjusted slowly to the small sliver of illumination from under the door. He glanced around and saw that they were alone now. With his quirk, Izuku could feel the man who had led him here moving away down the hall. His attention returned to the girl in front of him. My brother is studying to be a hero. A hero? Eri's eyebrows scrunched in confusion as her head tilted to the side. Izuku gently reached out to push some of the girl's loose hair behind her ear. A hero is supposed to be someone who helps those in need. The good ones are willing to put their lives on the line to save those who are weaker than them. The good ones? Are there bad ones? This girl may be too smart for her own good. Or maybe she had just spent too much time exposed to the darker side of life, much like Izuku. There are, Izuku admitted. Unfortunately, there are a lot of bad people out there who become heroes for bad reasons. However, my brother is not like that. If he saw that you were in trouble, I guarantee that he will not rest until he saves you. But he can't. Fear poured out of Eri, overwhelming Izuku's senses. Her little body was trembling. If he tries, then Mr. Overhaul will kill him. The memory of Magna turning to bloody mist flashed through Izuku's mind. He did not want that to happen to Mikumo. Gently, Izuku reached a hand out to rest on Eri's head. At his touch, her trembling stilled. Have faith, little one. I won't let that happen. And I will do everything I can to protect you. That little seed of hope returned as her fear diminished. It may take time before I have the chance to really do anything, but I will be here for you the whole time. Okay? Eri nodded slowly. Okay. Feeling Eri's fear when they were taken to the lab had been enough to make Izuku sick, but it was nothing compared to seeing what they did to her. For once Izuku wished he really was quirkless so that he wouldn't know just how uncaring these monsters were as they cut into a little girl to take blood and tissue samples. They took samples from Izuku as well, though not as much. Izuku had seen many things in his life that he would call evil, yet none compared with Overhaul. That was why Izuku swore that if he ever had the chance to kill the man, he would. Weeks passed and ᴅᴏᴟ announced that he had finished his perfected product. What does it do? Izuku asked. ᴅᴏᴟ's eyes crinkled in what seemed to be a smile hidden behind his mask. It makes everyone like you, Izuku. Quirkless. Breath caught in Izuku's lungs. He had spent his life longing for a quirk, and this man planned on destroying them. Izuku closed his mouth and kept his face blank. There was no reason to let this monster know how disturbing Izuku found this whole thing. We need to harvest more material before the product can go on the market, the villain continued. I'm sure Eri will cooperate as long as you're there. His eyes glinted with a knowing look as he glanced at Izuku. The urge to kill was very strong. He might even get away with it. ᴅᴏᴟ was never worried about Izuku as a possible threat. As much as he claimed to hate quirks, the man still looked down on the quirkless just like everyone else. Izuku could use one of his knives. But Izuku did not get the chance as Chronostasis rushed in. The heroes are here, he stated. ᴅᴏᴟ sighed. Get Eri. Izuku, you'll come with us while the other temps help slow the heroes down. Izuku nodded, more than happy to stay near the little girl. The group consisting of Izuku, ᴅᴏᴟ, Chronostasis, and Eri moved deeper into the tunnels, followed closely by two of the bullets, as ᴅᴏᴟ called them. Behind them Izuku could hear rumbling. What is that? He wondered out loud. Mimic is making sure the heroes have a hard time following us, Chronostasis answered. The conversation ended there as they kept walking. Izuku's hands twitched as he glanced at his companions. Eri was clearly terrified in Chronostasis's arms. If there were fewer members of the Ḥeihōseikai present, then Izuku might have a chance of getting the drop on ᴅᴏᴟ and escaping. As it stood, there was no opening. Far sooner than any of them expected, a hero arrived to attack. Izuku did not recognize him, but he called himself ⴅ The hero had a fascinating quirk that allowed him to pass through objects at will. He was fast and quickly managed to separate Eri from Chronostasis. Izuku stayed out of the way of the fight, especially once the hero had Eri in his arms. He hoped that the hero could hold out, but doubted that ⴅ would succeed. The hero easily took down the two bullets. He also knocked out Chronostasis. ᴅᴏᴟ used his quirk to attack ⴅ with wave after wave of spikes from the floor, and the hero phased through everyone while keeping Eri safe the whole time. Things took a sudden turn for the worse, however, when one of ᴅᴏᴟ's followers shot the hero with a quirk-erasing bullet. Izuku watched with growing frustration as ⴅ fought on only to be injured more and more. Izuku decided it was time to step in. First, Izuku made sure no one was paying attention to him. He pushed down any concern in his direction. Then he used the teaching Toga had given him about hiding his presence. He moved quietly to pick up the gun and quirk-erasing bullets. Before using the gun, Izuku moved over to where Chronostasis lay seemingly unconscious from an earlier hit by the hero. Despite the seeming unconsciousness, Izuku could feel the man's focus on the fight. Chronostasis was sure to get in Izuku's way once he started. So, he pulled out one of his knives and stabbed it into the base of the man's spine. There was no time to think about what he just did as Izuku aimed the gun carefully at ᴅᴏᴟ. The villain was still entirely focused on ⴅ and did not even notice what Izuku is doing until he pulled the trigger. By then, it was too late. The bullet hit the mark and left ᴅᴏᴟ quirkless. The next part was a bit tricky as Izuku pushed ᴅᴏᴟ's momentary panic into overdrive, leaving the man paralyzed by his emotions for only a moment. That moment is long enough. Izuku sprinted forward and plunged his knife into ᴅᴏᴟ's throat. He yanked the blade to the side with his full strength, cutting both his trachea and artery wide open. Blood splattered out as the Yakuza boss fell to the ground, writhing and choking as he died. Izuku blinked a few times. His hand and arm felt warm and wet. He looked down to see blood painting his skin from the knife up to above his elbow and more spattered across his shirt. Then it hit him what he just did. He killed one, possibly two, men without even hesitating. Izuku's hands shook as he looked down at ᴅᴏᴟ's body. Yet he could not regret it. Not when he looked over to Eri and felt her shocked relief. Izuku smiled at the girl as he walked toward her. Stay back! Lemillion cried as he tried to block Izuku's path. Izuku tilted his head as he studied the injured hero. You did well, he told the older boy. Without you, I never could have killed that monster and freed Eri. But you don't need to worry anymore. She's safe now. As he spoke, Izuku pushed and pulled at the other boy's emotions, trying to create a sense of calm. It seemed to work too well. Lemillion fell to his knees as the adrenaline started to fade and his injuries finally hit him. Izuku reached out and caught the falling hero, lowering him gently to the ground, getting more blood on himself in the process. He then went to Eri. Is he okay? The little girl asked. He'll be fine, Izuku assured. The other heroes will be here soon to take care of him. Izuku scooped up Eri in his arms and headed for the exit he knew Overhaul had been planning to use. They got outside without any more problems. Now, Izuku needed to figure out what to do with the girl he rescued. If he took her back to the base, Izuku had no doubt that Shigaraki would try to use her just like Overhaul had. Izuku might be able to protect her, but it would not be ideal. He already had a hard enough time protecting Kaken from the other villains. On the other hand, did he really trust the heroes? Izuku set Eri on her feet and looked her in the eyes. Eri, I need to ask you what you want to do? I could take you with me, but the people I'm staying with are not very safe. I'm worried they might try to hurt you. He felt the fear even before it appeared on the girl's face. On the other hand, I could take you back to the heroes. I don't know if I trust them completely, but I don't think they would hurt you. Eri bit down on her lip as she thought. What about your brother? You said Deku was good, right? Izuku stilled. His brother was probably there with the heroes and there was no way Mikumo would let anything happen to Eri. You're right. My brother will keep you safe. He knelt down and gave Eri a tight hug. I'll miss you, but you'll be safer this way. Why can't you come with me? Sorrow seeped out of Eri into Izuku. You saved me, so that makes you a hero too, right? A sad smile spread across Izuku's face. I wish the world worked like that, Eri. But it doesn't. To the heroes, I will always be a villain. That's why I can't come with you. Even if I came, they would just lock me away. Especially since he just committed murder. Izuku pushed that thought down. He could freak out about having murdered people later when Eri was not right next to him. But why? There were tears in her big ruby eyes. Izuku saved me. You're a good person, I know you are. By this point Izuku was fighting back his own tears. Maybe someday we will be able to see each other again. Until then, can you do me a favor? She nodded quickly. Can you keep an eye on my brother? Deku is his hero name, but his real name is Mikumo. I think he's been kind of lonely since I left. So, can you make sure he knows he's not alone? I will. She threw her arms around Izuku again for one more hug. He picked her up and moved back towards where the heroes were gathered above ground. The two watched together for a while, still holding each other tight. Finally, Izuku saw Mikumo come out from the building. He was walking beside a stretcher with Lemillion on it, and looked utterly defeated. Look! Izuku pointed to his brother. I think he's sad that he didn't find you, Eri. Do you think you could go cheer him up? Eri slipped from his arms down to the ground. She looked up and gave a firm nod. Goodbye, Mr. Izuku. I hope I see you again. Same. He gave her a soft smile and a gentle nudge. After only a moment of hesitation, Eri ran across the street and over to Mikumo. Izuku could feel his brother's relief when the little girl ran up to him. He gave himself only a minute before leaving to meet back up with the League. Izuku could not risk being caught here. You did what? Shigaraki's hand clamped down on the soda can he was holding, causing it to turn to dust. You had the girl Overhaul was using in your hands and you turned her over to the heroes? What were you thinking? Izuku kept his gaze steady. The whole League was watching him as they sat around their run-down hideout. I was thinking that if I brought that girl here you would try to use her. I was thinking that she had been hurt enough and deserves a chance at being happy. I hate to say it, but I'm with the kid on this one. Dabi piped up from across the room. I'm not a fan of using or abusing children. I mean, Izuku's already a bit on the young side for this life. We don't need to bring in an even younger brat. Shigaraki sighed as he dropped down to sit on a beat-up old couch. I suppose you have a point. Besides, it's not like we really could have used her without the doctor's help anyway. And you did kill that jerk overhaul, so I'll let it slide this time. Well, Izuku stood up. If that's settled, I'm going to go check on Kaken. Don't worry. Mr. Compress waved his hand dismissively. We took care of your pet while you were gone. Izuku glared at Compress's masked face. His voice was laced with venom as he hissed back. Kaken isn't my pet. He's my friend. Toga threw her arms around Izuku's shoulders. Chill out, Izuku. Everyone knows not to touch your Kaken. Whatever. He shrugged off her arms and headed to the back room. As soon as the door opened, Katsuki's head shot up. Izuku could feel the relief when Katsuki's red eyes landed on him. Deku, where have you been? His voice was harsh, but Izuku knew he was not really angry. It's a long story. Let's get you loose and let you clean up. Then we'll talk. Katsuki complied easily. Once he was clean and the two were sitting next to each other on the bed, Izuku told him all about Eri and the mission with Overhaul. I made sure she was with Mikumo before I left. I just hope the Hero Commission doesn't try to use her or something. Katsuki bumped his arm against Izuku's. You worry too much, nerd. You saved that little girl's life. That kinda sounds like you're still trying to be a hero. He smirked at Izuku knowingly. In response, Izuku rolled his eyes. I'm not a hero, Kaken. Or did you miss the part where I killed 2 people? He could still feel the blood on his hands. TCH. What I meant is that you still want to help people, just like always. I doubt that's a sentiment your new villain friends share. A frown twisted Izuku's lips. Katsuki was not wrong. Most of the other members of the League of Villains had no issue with collateral damage. Izuku was not sure if any of them really cared for the lives of the average person. But Izuku did care. He may hate most of the heroes and the society that they had built, but he cared about the innocent people caught in the middle. Katsuki was watching Izuku closely as he processed the words. You don't belong here, Deku. I don't belong anywhere. Izuku snapped back. I think this world has made it very clear that there is no place for people like me. Silence sat between them. Izuku glared at the bed underneath them. He purposely did not think about Kaken's emotions. For once, Izuku did not want to know how his words made his friend feel. Then make a place. Katsuki's words broke through the silence, and made Izuku snap his head up to stare at the other boy. I'm done underestimating you, Deku. I think you can do whatever you set your mind to. When we were little, you said we would be unstoppable together. I'm here now, so what's holding you back? Tears started to form at the edges of Izuku's eyes. Kaken believed in him. Thanks, Kaken. He leaned his head on the other boy's shoulder. I guess I need to start coming up with a plan. Well, you're not alone. I'll help you work through your ideas. Joy bloomed inside Izuku as he found himself looking forward to the future for the first time since the day he met All Might and had his hopes for being a hero crushed. Eri raised her hand in farewell. Mikumo gave her the best smile he could manage as he waved back. Her unexpected visit to campus had brought all the worries about Izuku back to his mind. When Eri ran up to Mikumo seemingly out of nowhere during the raid, he had been shocked to say the least. They had all given up on finding Eri after they discovered the corpses of Overhaul and Chronostasis along with an unconscious Mario. Yet there she was and coming to them on her own. The story Eri told of Izuku saving her raised so many questions that Mikumo could not answer. He just wished he could have seen Izuku again. Despite everything that had happened, Mikumo missed his brother. But by the time Eri finished explaining, there was no sign of Izuku anywhere. Are you okay? The familiar monotone of Shoto asked, pulling Mikumo from his thoughts. Mikumo turned and gave a shaky smile. Yeah. Just thinking. Apparently his smile was not convincing. Shoto frowned. You can talk to me if you want. Is it about your brother? I know things can be complicated with families. It's just. Mikumo searched for the right words. I know Izuku is working with the League of Villains. We saw that when he helped them take Kaken. But if he really is evil, then why did he save Eri? I think a lot of people make a mistake when they treat people as if they are all good or all bad. My father does a lot of great things as a hero, but that does not mean he is always a good person. Shoto tilted his head in thought. Perhaps your brother is the reverse of that. He is a villain, but he still does good things. I suppose even villains can feel compassion for a little girl. Or maybe Izuku hasn't completely lost his way, Mikumo stated hopefully. Maybe we can still save him. Shoto set his hand on Mikumo's shoulder. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. Just because he did one thing right does not make him less of a villain. But it may mean there is hope. I know Izuku. He wouldn't turn his back on us. But he did. He is working with people who tried to kill us, and he helped them kidnap our classmate. How can you defend him after that? A bit of anger edged its way into Shoto's voice. Izuku may be your brother, but you need to face the fact that he is a villain now. Mikumo frowned, but he let the subject drop. It was clear he was the only one holding out hope for Izuku. And he would not give that up. At least the Shei Hasaikai had money, Compress complained. We should have had them buy us some fancy tuna or something. Izuku rolled his eyes as the others continued complaining about the lack of funds. At least he was trying to find a solution. Not that the others had that many options. They were known villains, so finding a normal job was out of the question. They had attacked a few groups and gangs and taken their stuff, but it had not been much. On the laptop he was currently using, Izuku ran a test of his new program. Or rather virus. It did not do any real damage to the systems it infected, just forwarded itself to all their contacts, and left a backdoor for Izuku to access later if he needed to. It was attached to an email that tried to get people to fund a noble cause. The supposed cause was a fake foundation against quirk discrimination. Many people had quirks that were weak, or seen in a bad light, such as mutant or villainous quirks. Izuku hoped that people like that would be willing to donate to his cause. And yes, Izuku did plan to work against such discrimination. He just may not go about it in traditional ways. The ground began to shake violently, causing dust to fall from the cracked ceiling. The whole league ran outside to find the cause. A giant burst from the ground talking about searching for them and asked Shigaraki, "Are you really the leader who will succeed All for One? Is this the formidable power left by All for One? I'm not impressed." Shigaraki mused. Izuku stared at their leader with wide eyes. How did he know of this guy, and why had he not mentioned him before? At Shigaraki's words, the giant started going wild with attacks that blew everyone back while demanding answers from his absent master, weeping, and saying that Shigaraki was too weak. Izuku was at a loss what to do, or even think of this sudden development. Where had this guy even come from? A voice started talking from the radio the giant arrived with. Izuku vaguely recognized the voice, and Shigaraki called him doctor, so it must have been the doctor that worked with All for One. The doctor explained that the giant was ᴍᴇʟ. He had several quirks and was fiercely loyal to All for One. Things were not looking good as ᴍᴇʟ charged toward them. Dalby let loose a massive wave of flames, but the giant charged right through without even reacting. That didn't work at all! Toga yelled as they all stumbled backwards. Izuku felt his chest get tight. Was this how he died? Crushed by a fanatical fan of Shigaraki's master? Makia! The voice of All for One called out from the radio. Izuku's eyes widened as he followed the sound. Makia! It called again. The giant changed course immediately and fell to the ground next to the radio. That was a recording of All for One's voice. I knew it would calm the big guy down, the doctor explained. So the giant is extremely powerful physically, but no very bright. Izuku muttered quietly to himself. Was he always like that, or did the multiple quirks affect his mental capabilities? His obsessive loyalty could be a good thing if Shigaraki could prove himself worthy of it as well, but what is he up to? Toga questioned, breaking Izuku out of his muttering. He realized he had not listened to the rest of what the doctor was saying. It seemed something was going on as everyone waited. Izuku's stomach churned and he could feel a tickle at the back of his throat. He tried to clear it, but instead it grew. Sludge filled his mouth and burst out. Memories flashed through Izuku's mind of being strangled by the sludge villain, but this wasn't that. A more recent memory came to mind as the black slime consumed him. He knew this quirk. It was the same teleportation quirk ⴅ used at Kamino. They were warped to a large dark room filled with capsules that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Each one held a Nomu. Nomu, Dabi observed. They don't look like ones I've seen before. Dabi, I'm impressed you can tell the difference. The doctor calls from the far end of the room. These little ones are different. Nothing like mid or low-level Nomu. The conversation continued. But Izuku got distracted looking at the Nomu and thinking about what the doctor, who mentioned his name was Ujiko Daruma, had said. The machinery was unlike anything he had seen before. It must have been what the doctor used to modify the creatures and implant the quirks. Speaking of quirks, how was the doctor able to bring them here with a quirk that ⴅ had when he was captured? Does that mean he can make copies of quirks? Izuku muttered to himself. Do the copies have to be stored in a Nomu or is there another way of storing them? Is there a limit to how many times a quirk can be copied? What clever observations! The doctor chuckled. I have indeed found a way to copy quirks. It would be a lot harder to make the Nomu if I had to find fresh quirks for each one. Izuku nodded to himself. That makes sense. From what I read, several of the Nomu showed hyper-regeneration and that would be very difficult to find more than once. Then there's the warp quirk. But why not copy Kurogiri's quirk? I mean, before he was captured by the heroes. With every word, the doctor's creepy smile just seemed to get bigger. If you don't mind, Tamura, I would like to keep this boy here to help me in the lab while you deal with Gigantomachia. Shigaraki shrugged. Endurance fights aren't really Izuku's thing, so why not? Izuku cut in. I don't mind helping. But I'm not staying here. I'm staying with Kaken. Of course. You can bring your pet along. The glint in the doctor's eye made Izuku's stomach turn. He did not want this man anywhere near his friend. For all he knew, this man might want to turn Katsuki into a Nomu or something. How about I just help you during the day and go back to Kaken at night? I'm sure we can work something out. Good. Shigaraki stepped in between them. Now send me back so we can get started. I feel like I could take on the world. There were many skills Izuku had worked on since he started hanging out with villains. He was very thankful that hiding his emotions was one of them. The old Izuku could never have kept a straight face as he watched the monster disguised as a doctor work. Izuku had learned far more than he ever wanted to about how Nomu were made during the past month. Choosing the right cadaver is very important for making high-end Nomu. The doctor commented as his machines caused the beast they were working on to writhe in agony. For the lower-level creations it is less important, but the high-ends are capable of their own thoughts and decisions. Having the right foundation for the personality is essential. How do they retain personality? Izuku asked in hopes that it would distract him from the experiment before them. That is actually one of the mysteries of quirks I have yet to unravel. I can store and copy quirks, but somehow the original quirk brings with it some of the personality of the original holder. I believe this is how the successful reanimated high-end Nomu retain personality traits of the person before they die. The idea of transferred quirks bringing with them the personality of the original holder made Izuku freeze. But my quirk was transferred. Does that mean that I'm my personality dash? A laugh interrupted Izuku's stuttered question. You don't need to worry. Your quirk is not a strong one on its own, so the effects of the original holder will be negligible. On the other hand, if you had a powerful quirk such as Endeavor's fire, that would have been more likely to affect you. The more powerful the quirk, the more it affects the personality. But only with original quirks, not copies. Izuku summarized. Correct. Dr. Ujiko smiled wide. But without ⴅ can you even transfer original quirks? A good question. The doctor huffed. I actually have found a way to extract original quirks, though it is slow and rather tricky. But it can be done. The doctor paused his explanation to press a few keys on the computer controlling the experiment. The gnome was shrieked in pain and then fell limp. Dr. Izuku frowned and turned off the machines. As I was saying, it is possible to remove and transfer an original quirk. In fact, I removed All for One's quirk from him before he was captured. He chuckled. The heroes had no idea that he was only carrying a copy when they fought him. But why do that? Izuku questioned. Other than for experimental reasons, that is. Didn't you hear what I told Tamura? Dr. Izuku huffed as he pressed a few controls, causing mechanical arms to drag the gnome back to its tank. Once he subdues Gigantomachia, I promise to give him power. That power is none other than All for One. He truly will be my master's successor. Even as they moved on to other experiments, Izuku could not get all that the doctor had told him out of his head. The thoughts were still circling in his mind by the time they finished for the day, and Izuku used the warp quirk to send Izuku to an empty alleyway. Izuku kept his jacket hood up and his face down as he made his way to the apartment the doctor had set up for him and Kaken. A hero passed Izuku on the sidewalk and the boy did not even flinch. The color contacts and medical mask were enough to hide his recognizable features. Reacting to the hero's presence would only draw attention. When he entered the apartment, Izuku found Kaken staring out the window at where the hero had passed a few minutes before. Were you thinking about trying to get his attention? Izuku asked. Katsuki scoffed and touched the black choker on his neck. A choker that was really a very dangerous and unremovable collar capable of killing Kaken at any moment. Even if I got the hero's attention, we both know escape is no longer an option for me. Izuku did not even need his quirk to feel the frustration and sadness in Katsuki's tone. I never wanted you to be collared like that, Kaken. I trust you, but I'm not in charge. Clearly. Katsuki rolled his eyes. Admit it, Izuku. You're nothing more than a tool to these villains. They don't trust you and will never trust me. He ran his fingers over the choker again. If we stay with them, I'll be wearing a stinking bomb around my neck for the rest of my probably short life. Kaken. Izuku tried to put a warning into his tone, but knowing Kaken it would probably make no difference. Instead, he just focused his quirk on keeping Katsuki from completely losing his temper. Quickly, Izuku pulled up his laptop and started running a certain program he wrote. He had spent the past month perfecting it. The program would block what the microphone on the choker picked up and replace it with a false conversation about dinner that would not raise suspicion. Be careful what you say. Izuku hissed as soon as the program was running. TCH. It would be more suspicious if I seemed content with all this garbage. Katsuki flopped into the chair opposite Izuku. I'm not going to pretend I'm happy about this. That psycho doctor could blow my head off any second. I'm working on it. Izuku muttered as he scrolled through the lines of code on his screen. I'm close to getting complete control of that collar. I just have a few things left to figure out. It had been hard enough to spoof the signal for the audio. Izuku knew that getting complete control would still take work. Great! Katsuki's voice dripped with sarcasm. Then you can have the power to blow my head off instead. Izuku huffed and decided to let it drop. This discussion was not going anywhere productive. It's not like Izuku could promise to take the collar off once he had control. He might be starting to trust Kaken, but it was too soon to be giving him an easy way to escape. Izuku needed to wait till he was sure Katsuki would not run. Katsuki stood up and started making some dinner. Izuku found his mind slipping back to what the doctor had said about quirks earlier that day. The way the pieces were fitting together in his head created a worrying image. Kaken, I need a second opinion on something. If you need to ramble about the program you're doing, fine. But don't expect me to understand any of it. Katsuki grumbled without turning around. It's not that. Izuku gave a quick smile before it dropped. Some things Dr. Izuku said have been bothering me. We were talking about quirk copies versus the original quirks, and he said that the original quirks carry a part of the original holder's personality. If that's true, how did the old creep not go insane from all the quirks he stole? Katsuki was actually paying attention now. He set the food he was making aside and turned to face Izuku. Based on what the doctor said, the stronger the quirk, the more impact it has. My guess would be that All for One was just such a powerful quirk that even with all those others inside him, it still did not have a huge impact. Izuku cupped his chin between his thumb and index finger as he thought out loud. Or maybe he was just crazy enough to begin with that it didn't matter. Katsuki cut in with a scoff. Izuku chuckled slightly before returning to what he was saying before. Ujiko was explaining it in the context of Nomu and how the quirk could impact the personalities of his high-end Nomu. Izuku stopped to take a breath. He needed to stay on topic. But then we got talking about being able to remove and store original quirks, rather than just copies. He said he actually has stored the original All for One, and the man himself was only carrying a copy when captured. What? Katsuki's face twisted in confusion. Why would he do that? It make no sense to take away that power unless they had a plan for it. And even then, why take the original? I know. Izuku locked eyes with Katsuki. The doctor plans to give the quirk to Shigaraki once he proves himself. Silence filled the room as they both processed the implications of this statement. Izuku could feel the spike of fear through his quirk even as he watched Katsuki's eyebrows rise as his eyes grew wide. Please tell me that doesn't mean what I'm thinking, Izuku. That's why I wanted a second opinion. I wanted to make sure I'm not crazy. This whole thing is crazy. Katsuki started pacing and pulling at his hair. If all that is true, then Krusty Lips would be turned into a copy of that monster. Worse, he would be even more powerful without all those injuries and his stupid disintegration quirk on top of it all. We're talking about the guy who was missing half his head and he still put All Might into retirement in order to defeat him. With this, he could take over the whole freaking world if he wanted to. On top of that, Shigaraki would be gone. Izuku's comment earned him an unamused look from Katsuki. He continued, I know you think he's just a villain and he doesn't matter to you, but without Shigaraki I really would have died on the street after Mom kicked me out. I owe him a lot. Even if I don't agree with your reasoning. Katsuki sat down across from Izuku again. The last thing that I want is another All for One running around out there. So how do we stop this? Izuku chewed on his thumbnail as he thought. I would need to convince Shigaraki to turn down Dr. Ujiko's offer. I could tell him what I've learned, but he tends to be more emotional than logical. That's for sure, Katsuki grumbled. Izuku ignored the interruption. If I'm going to convince him, I need to offer him an alternative. A different way to gain power. Something that would also serve your own goals. Katsuki grinned at Izuku. Right. Izuku pulled out his notebook and started jotting down ideas. It would need to be something big and impressive. Something that would give him a level of power that could not be gained from just powerful quirks. He paused as an idea started to form. I might have just the thing. It happened the same time twice every week. A hero patrolled past the building that Katsuki was a prisoner in and never noticed the missing UA student watching him from above. Some days Katsuki debated about trying to get his attention. The caller tracked his location in words, but it would be easy to write a note and try to get it to the heroes. He could get out of here and go back to his old life. But if he left, what would become of Izuku? Sure, Izuku had joined the League of Villains, but what other choice had there been? Katsuki understood that he was as much to blame for Izuku ending up here as anyone else. He needed to at least try to make things right. The hero disappeared around the corner, and Katsuki stepped away from the window walking to the kitchen to make tea. He knew that Izuku had been manipulating him since he arrived. He was not subtle in the guilt-tripping. But the hard part was that Izuku had a point. Katsuki had been horrible to Izuku for years. Sure, the nerd never had a chance of being a hero without a quirk, but Katsuki went way too far in trying to kill that dream and nearly killed Izuku in the process. For a while, Katsuki had feared that Izuku really was turning into a villain and the friend he once had was gone. After Izuku saved that girl, he had hope again. Then, their talk the other day got Izuku making plans of his own separate from the villains. Izuku was not the same as he had been, trauma changes people. But there was still enough of the old Izuku left that he had hope. Izuku had manipulated Katsuki enough. It was time he fought back and got Izuku away from the villains. They may have both lost the chance to be heroes, but there was still hope to get Izuku on a better path. Katsuki knew this would not be easy, but if there was one thing he did well, it was win. If we're going to pull this off, I need a better hacker to help me. Izuku did not want to admit defeat, but he was still new to this. A top-tier security systems, like the one he would soon be trying to get into, was beyond his skill set. Giving up already? Katsuki scoffed from his place on the couch watching TV. Not giving up, Izuku answered. Just acknowledging my limitations. Fortunately, I might have a solution. Oh? He turned to face Izuku. It was mostly kept out of the news, but there was an attempt to break into Ū during the cultural festival a few weeks ago. Ū, huh? The melancholy in Katsuki's voice drew Izuku's attention. He quickly checked the other boy's emotions using his quirk. Kaken was feeling a lot of longing and regret. Izuku bit his lip and debated what to say. He did not want to hurt Kaken, but letting him continue to long for his old life would only lead to problems. Apparently, the festival was a huge success. Everyone seemed very happy. He poked at Katsuki's anger with his quirk. It was easy to bring back Kaken's most familiar emotion. TCH. Katsuki glared at the TV. Izuku decided to push further. Class 1A put on a big musical performance. They said the whole class was involved, including some new guy I hadn't seen before. Katsuki jumped up and stomped his way over to Izuku. Show me, he growled. Izuku pulled up the pictures that had been posted to Yue's website. Katsuki glared especially hard at the one showing Shinso Hitoshi on the drums. They just couldn't wait to replace me, huh? His anger was mixed with a sense of betrayal and abandonment. I'm sorry, Kaken. No one deserved to be treated that way. But Izuku was not surprised. No matter what the heroes might say, at the end of the day they did what was best for themselves. I don't need your pity, Katsuki spat out. Just tell me what this has to do with your stupid plan. Right. Izuku took a moment to get his focus back to his original plan. There were two low-tier villains that tried to attack Ū during the festival. The interesting part is the girl, La Brava, who had a program that would have shut down the whole Ū security system. I've done a little checking around and it seems she is quite the impressive hacker. How does any of that help if she is already in police custody? Plans and possibilities flitted through Izuku's mind as he let his unfocused eyes flit around in thought. I have a way. I'll need some help. Toga should be able to pull it off. What about your daily time with the creepy doctor? Taking one day to myself shouldn't be suspicious. Izuku smiled at Katsuki. I think we can pull this off. Toga kept her smile small as she waited for the guard to finish checking her ID. Or rather the ID for the person whose face she was wearing. It was so exciting to be helping Izuku out. She may not get to stab anyone, but drinking this guard's blood and pretending to be him was still fun. Everything seems to be in order, the man in front of her stated. We'll get those two prisoners brought out for you momentarily. Of course. It was not surprising that Izuku got everything set up correctly. Izuku was the best. He was her friend after all. That's what he said when he called her for help. They're friends. Soon, Toga was watching as a tall man and very short woman were loaded into the back of the van she came in. She had to resist frowning though when two guards hopped in the back as well. Izuku had not mentioned that in his plan. Are you two coming with me? She questioned with her best imitation of a polite smile. Yes. As is procedure. One guard answered with narrowed eyes. Rather than saying something that might give her away, Toga just nodded and closed the doors. She waited until they were out of the facility before pulling out her phone and texting Izuku. Toga, so, turns out that it's procedure to put some guards in the back. Got a plan for that? She had to start driving as she waited for a reply. When it came, it was a series of quick texts. Izuku, dang it. I'll come up with something. Proceed as planned for now. I have a few ideas. If you see something strange, have them investigate. Toga smiled. She could hardly wait to see what Izuku came up with. And if worse came to worse, she could always just kill them both. She was driving through a rougher neighborhood off the main road when something strange finally came up. There in the middle of the road was a dumpster, and, are those legs sticking out of it? Toga actually wanted to go check it out herself, but that's not what Izuku said to do. Hey! She called to the men in the back. There's something in the road. You two check it out while I call it in. She held up the radio in demonstration. It was a little surprising that the two went without arguing. Toga wondered if Izuku was messing with their emotions from wherever he was hiding. She pretended to talk on the radio until the guards were away from the van. I wonder what the plan is now. Toga tapped the steering wheel while bobbing her head side to side. A sudden boom made her grip the wheel tight. Smoke was bursting out of the dumpster and engulfing the two men outside. The passenger door opened and a beanie-clad Izuku jumped in. Drive! He ordered. Toga slammed the car into drive and stepped on the gas, swerving onto the sidewalk to get around the dumpster. They were barely past the smoke when something slammed into the hood of the van. It appeared to be a harpoon. With one hand Toga rolled down the window while the other pulled out a knife. Toga! Izuku yelled as he grabbed the steering wheel she had let go of. Buildings flew by as the van swerved around, but Toga kept her focus on the harpoon and the rope attached to it. Before Toga could cut the rope, one of the guards slammed into the side of the van. The harpoon and rope had apparently come from his hand. Toga quickly changed targets and stabbed into the guard, hitting the arm that was trying to grab the windowsill. A short scream burst from the guard. His hand with the harpoon stayed anchored to where it had hit the hood just in front of the windshield. His other hand raised to point at Toga, and she quickly jabbed it with another knife. Since Izuku was holding the wheel, it gave her 2 free hands for her knives. A wicked smile spread across Toga's face as she stabbed repeatedly until her victim stopped struggling. With a last strike, she slashed the rope attaching him to the van. Can you please stop accelerating? Izuku shrieked. Toga looked ahead and saw that the road they were on was coming to an end. She laughed and moved her foot to the brake. Calm down, Izuku. We've got plenty of room. She grabbed back the wheel and turned sharply onto the next street. I sometimes forget that you're absolutely insane, Izuku grumbled. His body was still stiff as he gripped the center console with a tight hold. Toga threw him a quick smile. Ah, you're too sweet. I thought I was only mostly insane. What the heck is going on up there? A squeaky voice called from the back. Izuku turned to look in the back and gave one of his sunshine smiles. Things may have not gone quite to plan, but we're here to rescue you. A glance in the mirror showed that both people in the back were giving Izuku looks of absolute shock. What? You're serious? ᴅᴜᴜ's mouth hung open in shock. Her companion, gentle criminal, glanced between ᴅᴜᴜ and Izuku. Don't you think a target so large is a little too ambitious? Especially for a first job together. Izuku kept a friendly smile fixed on his face. You can't change the world without being a little ambitious. I'm familiar enough with your work to know you're the best, ᴅᴜᴜ. Together I'm sure we can pull this off. Katsuki plopped down in the kitchen chair next to Izuku. He rubbed the back of his neck while staring at the collar that now sat on the table rather than around his throat. You could say that getting that thing off was the first job. Izuku had been working at that thing for weeks and you got it in a few hours. He already laid the groundwork for me, so that barely counts. The short woman waved her hand dismissively. Besides, even if you got into the commission, what do you hope to accomplish? They're the most powerful organization in all of Japan. A break-in will just make them come after you harder. They are powerful. Izuku felt his smile pull more towards a smirk. That's the point. This isn't simply a break-in. If I pull this off, the Hero Public Safety Commission will be under my control. If even half of the rumors online are true, then there should be enough blackmail material stored in their files to destroy the commission a dozen times over. On top of that, he lifted the collar that had been on Katsuki. This will act as an extra obstacle to keep the commission president in line. And what will you be making the commission do for you? Gentle asked. Let's worry about that after we pull this off. Izuku answered. For now, I think this is ambitious enough. Besides, the next step will depend on a lot of things. Especially, what secrets the commission is hiding. The two newcomers glanced at each other. Their brows were still knitted in uncertainty, and Izuku could feel their hesitation. Izuku debated about using his quirk. Honestly, it only seemed like they needed a small push. He just had to be careful. Kaken cut in before Izuku figured out what to say. Breaking two criminals out of high-security prison with only one person to help was already ambitious, but Izuku pulled it off no problem. The nerd is a freaking genius, and if he says he can pull this off, then he can. Aren't you supposed to be a prisoner of the villains? Gentle questioned. How can we trust your word on the matter when you apparently are a traitor to your own ideals? I'm not a damn traitor, Kaken growled. My priorities have shifted. Izuku has been my friend for as long as I can remember, and if he needs me, that's more important than pursuing my own desires. He leaned forward to glare at the older man. What about you? What do you actually care about? It's La Brava that answered. I care about Gentle. The woman looked between Izuku and Kaken. Gentle means everything to me, and you saved him. So I'll do it. I'll help you with this crazy idea. A slow, genuine smile pulled up Izuku's lips, replacing the fake friendly one from before. He had not even needed to use his quirk or manipulate them at all. All right. Let's go over the plan. Mikumo could not shake the feeling that something was off. The sudden message from the Hero Public Safety Commission, or HPSC, seemed out of the blue, and the only reason Mikumo could think of for it was that something came up with Izuku. Had they found him? Had they found Kaken? The teachers excused Mikumo from lessons for the day so he could go to the HPSC headquarters. He was only a few blocks away when he heard his name called from an alleyway. Mikumo? A familiar voice called out quietly. Familiar, and yet he had not heard it in months. The voice all too similar to Mikumo's own. He looked down the alley where the voice came from. It was Izuku, huddled against the wall and looking terrified. Mikumo did not hesitate. He went straight to his brother and grabbed his shoulders. Izuku, what are you doing here? Are you okay? Izuku's arms tightened where they were wrapped around himself. I need your help, Mikumo. His voice was quivering. I know you probably hate me. Never. Mikumo cut in. You're my brother. I'll never hate you. You're sure? Izuku's eyes were pleading. Of course. Mikumo smiled wide. That was when he felt the sharp prick in his thigh. Mikumo looked down and saw Izuku pressing a cylindrical device to Mikumo's leg. Mikumo's head was feeling fuzzy. What? Sorry, brother. Izuku's voice was overly sweet as he whispered. I need to borrow your identity for a few hours. No. Mikumo tried to fight. He pushed at Izuku and tried to stay awake. But it was too late. Please don't hate me, Izuku mumbled to his unconscious brother. Stealing Mikumo's hero costume and identity was the easiest way to get into the HPSC building. Izuku knew that. But knowing that did not make it any easier to betray his brother like this. He carefully carried Mikumo into the back door of a bakery that is closed for the day. He had picked the lock and checked for security systems before Mikumo arrived. It would be a safe place to leave him until he woke up. Izuku had managed to put together a jumpsuit that looked like the underneath part of Mikumo's hero costume. He just needed to borrow the belt and support gear including gloves, knee pads, and the face mask for the complete look. He slips those on before checking for the most important part. The hero license with the name Deku on it was in a pocket of the utility belt. Izuku put it back after finding it and took a deep breath. Time to get going. The HPSC building was tall and intimidating. Izuku paused outside as he stared at it. Yes, he had looked over blueprints of the building and he had seen pictures before, but seeing it in person was a whole other thing. He knew there were over 100 commission employees working inside right now, and any of them would be happy to put a bullet through his head. These were not heroes. The Hero Commission was far more willing to use deadly force on a known villain like him. Yet, here he was about to walk in through the front door with almost no backup. The lobby was just as intimidating as the outside of the building. A high ceiling and marble floor made every sound echo in the overly quiet space. The secretary gave Izuku a fake professional smile with no actual happiness behind it. "Can I help you?" Her voice cracked through the silence like a whip. Izuku took a breath and returned the smile with one of his own. "Hi. I'm Hero Deku. I was asked to come in for a meeting." As he approached the desk, Izuku took in all the details he could. A computer sat in front of the secretary right at the edge of the counter. The computer was one of the fancy ones with USB ports built into the back of the monitor. Perfect. Now he just needed a distraction. He glanced around and saw the perfect thing sitting behind her. Izuku gasped excitedly. "Is that the new Top 10 Heroes figurine collector set?" Adding a spike of confusion to the woman's emotions was enough to get her to look back at the set. "Oh, yeah? They always keep it up to date with the current top 10. In the brief moment that her back was turned, Izuku inserted a USB drive into the computer. The design was compact so that it barely stuck out, and was not really noticeable. By the time she turned back, Izuku's hands were back at his sides as he smiled at the figurines. "I wish I could get every set. They're just too expensive to get every time. I'm sure the commission gets them for free." Was that a bit of jealousy Izuku was detecting? Jealousy over the commission getting free hero merch was not what Izuku expected, but it made for a good enough distraction from his own actions. "I wonder what they do with the old sets," he pondered aloud. "Probably just throw them in storage to collect dust." The secretary let out a long-suffering sigh and looked back to the computer screen. "I need to see your hero license to verify your identity." Izuku handed over the license, and the secretary quickly checked it before handing it back. "You should probably get going to your meeting. Take the elevator to the 14th floor and head down the hall to the left. The commission president's office is at the end of the hall." "Thanks." Izuku gave another beaming smile and headed to the elevator. First step complete. Step 2 was out of Izuku's hands. The USB would automatically launch a program that gave La Brava access to the systems of the building. She would use this access to get Katsuki and Gentle in through the back door and guide them to the different points they needed. Izuku really hoped he was making the right choice in letting Kaken help with this operation. Izuku was tempted to grab his phone and check in with the other three. He resisted the urge. Kaken could be trusted, and so could La Brava and Gentle. Izuku just needed to focus on his own role. A ding sounded before the doors opened to the 14th floor. Men and women in suits buzzed around outside the elevator, moving between desks and talking to each other. No one paid attention to Izuku as he moved to the hall to the left. As instructed, he went to the office at the end of the hall and knocked. "Enter," a female voice called out. Izuku slipped into the door and closed it behind him. The office was clearly designed to make visitors feel small. The ceiling was unnecessarily tall, the room was long, and all the furniture was large. At the far end sat a woman with short blonde hair and stony turquoise eyes, staring coldly at Izuku from her seat in an overly large desk chair. Her face was set in a slight frown. "Midoriya Mikumo, also known as Hero Deku, correct?" Izuku put on another big smile, just like his brother frequently did. "Yes, ma'am." She motioned to the uncomfortable-looking chair in front of the desk. "Have a seat." She flipped through the papers on her desk while Izuku sat. Silence filled the room and made for an uncomfortable atmosphere. Based on what Izuku knows about psychology, the silence was likely a purposeful power play. Izuku let himself fidget to pretend it was working. The longer this was drawn out, the better for Izuku. After 3 full minutes, the woman set down the papers. "Midoriya, I am Kino Sayaka, the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission. You were brought in today to discuss your brother. Haven't I already answered lots of questions about him?" Izuku asked as he ran through the possibilities. His brother definitely would have been questioned by the police after Kamino. The real question was how he responded to those questions. Clearly, from their interaction earlier today, Mikumo had not given up hope on helping Izuku. He just needed to figure out what perspective Mikumo was taking on the whole subject. This meeting will be a bit different. You stated before that your brother just made some bad choices. Is that still your belief? Well, at least that gave him an idea what approach Mikumo had. Yes. Izuku is not a bad person at heart. At least that's what Mikumo would surely say. Izuku was no longer so sure it was true. That is why we want your help bringing him in. The president gave a practiced smile, but Izuku could feel the well-hidden malice behind her facade. We were hoping you could give us some more personal information. Like what? Izuku gave his best wide-eyed innocent look. Hobbies, interests, anything that could help us find him. As if Izuku would actually give them anything useful. Izuku always loved heroes. Ah, but he gave me his collection of merchandise when I got into UA. Izuku fiddled with the mask around his neck. He had examined it when taking it from Mikumo. It had a full filtration system and was not just for looks. Any hobbies? She prodded more. He liked watching hero fights. Izuku muttered. The last fight he purposely watched was the day Mikumo saved Katsuki. This isn't anything useful. What about you? How is your relationship with your brother? Izuku could see where this was going, but he pretended not to. Our relationship is good. Or it was. Izuku cut off contact after everything that happened at Kamino. It felt weird referring to himself in third person. Perhaps we could use your relationship. You could draw Izuku out into the open for us. Izuku frowned. This woman was lucky he did not have his knife with him, or else she would definitely be bleeding after a comment like that. It seemed the president took his frown as simple hesitation. It's for his own good. The longer he is with the villains, the worse it will be for him. If you want to save your brother, we need your help. The vibrating of Izuku's phone was the only thing that stopped him from throwing the plan to the wind and attacking the woman in front of him outright. I'm not sure. Izuku ducked his head in an imitation of nervousness and hid his mouth with the face mask. You talked in previous interviews about how you want to help get your brother on the right path. She blinked down at the papers in front of her. Her brows furrowed in concentration. You repeatedly claimed it was just bad circumstances that led him there. Her words were getting slower by the second. If... The words cut out as the president's head fell to her desk. Madam President? Izuku called in fake concern, his face still hidden in the mask. He waited a few seconds as he sensed the woman's emotions calm in the way they always did for an unconscious person. With a hidden smile, Izuku pulled out his phone and called La Brava. Is everyone out? Looks like it, the woman cheerfully replied. The only people I see up on the cameras are you and our boys in the basement. I'll get them to the secure servers while you take care of the boss lady. Sounds good, Izuku replied and ended the call. Kino Sayaka woke slowly with a fuzzy feeling in her head. When she opened her eyes, it was to the familiar sight of her office other than the green-haired boy seated on her desk. Her sluggish thoughts took a moment to remember that she had been talking to the boy before passing out. Why was she asleep? Good morning, Madam President, Midoriya called out. Did you enjoy your sleep? She pushed herself to sit straighter. That was very unprofessional of me. I'm not sure what happened. I am. The smirk on Midoriya's face was far different from the sweet smile he had worn earlier in the day. A form of sleeping gas was put into the air conditioning system for the whole building. Everyone should be waking up soon, but I gave you something to wake you up faster so we would have time to talk. Everything in that statement was very suspicious. How do you know all that? Simple. The smirk grew into a terrifying smile. I'm the one who came up with the plan. Fear washed over Sayaka. There were two possibilities that she could think of in this situation, and they were both terrifying. Either Hero Deku was a traitor or this was the other twin. Midoriya continued. I did not properly introduce myself earlier. My name is Midoriya Izuku. I know you were expecting my brother, but I decided to come visit you instead. A member of the most dangerous villain organization in the country was sitting in front of her. If he was telling the truth, then all the normal security of the building was knocked out. There was a panic button on the bottom of her desk, but the villain was in her way. The only good thing was that he had not killed her yet. "What do you want?" "We'll get there." The boy was putting off a terrifying amount of confidence. "First, let's talk about the classified files you keep on your secure servers. I had seen lots of rumors about Lady Negant, but I had no idea the Commission had her commit so many murders. Even having her kill heroes that the Commission had problems with. I doubt the public would like that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Do you think the people would ever trust the Commission again if they learned all your dirty little secrets?" The fiasco with Lady Negant may have been before Sayaka was Commission President, but that did not make it any less of a black mark on their record. One of many black marks, all carefully hidden from the world and locked away in their vaults. "So this is about blackmail?" "Yep." Izuku hopped off her desk and leaned over Sayaka. "Blackmail and threats. We have copies of all of your files and access to all of your systems. We will know everything that goes on in this building, and if you make a move against me or my friends, we will take the whole Commission out." A small chuckle fell from Izuku's lips as he reached forward to touch something that was on Sayaka's neck. She wanted to pull away, but fear kept her still. "But that would be the least of your worries, Madam President." Sayaka's hand shot up to where the boy had touched. There was something on her neck that had not been there before she passed out. It felt like some sort of collar or choker. She stared at Izuku, who was laughing more at her reaction. "It looks like just a simple piece of jewelry, but the material is lined with tiny explosives and sensors. If you do or say anything that goes against my instructions or try to remove the collar, you won't live long enough to see the Commission fall." Being president of the Hero Commission had always come with risks, but never had she imagined a situation like this. There was nothing she could do. At least for now, Sayaka had to play along. "What do you want me to do?" "For now, just go about your business. Don't bother trying to use my brother to trap me, since I already know about that idea, and stay away from the League of Villains. I'll be in touch." With that, the villain turned away and walked out of the building. And the whole Hero Public Safety Commission could do nothing to stop him. This was practically, no it was, child trafficking. Katsuki glared at the file in front of him as he sat at the kitchen table. Hawks, the number 2 hero, was bought by the Hero Commission when he was just a child and trained by them to be the perfect little soldier. He never even had a choice in being a hero or in any of the missions he was given. Missions that included everything from killing people to spying on the League of Villains. Katsuki wondered what Izuku planned to do about that last fact, but right now he was more concerned with the fact that the people in charge of making sure villains were caught were in fact trafficking children. "What's wrong?" Izuku asked as he sat at the table next to Katsuki. He looked down at the papers in front of them. "Ah. Hawk's file. It's messed up," Katsuki muttered. "He didn't even get a childhood." "I can relate." Izuku shrugged. Katsuki gave him an unimpressed stare. "That's all you have to say? Fine, fine." A chuckle slipped from Izuku as he raised his hands in surrender. "All jokes aside, are you really that surprised?" "Of course. They're the ones in charge of the heroes." "Exactly," Izuku cut in. "They're the ones responsible for turning teens into government soldiers. If they cared about kids, they would care more about the safety practices in hero schools." "That's different." "Is it? 15-year-olds are told tales of glory and gaslighted into hero schools with no idea how much risk they are taking on. Do you have any idea how many kids are killed or permanently maimed due to training in hero schools?" Izuku tilted his head as his eyes studied Katsuki. He always seemed to be studying Katsuki's reactions lately. No doubt carefully choosing his words. "The Commission keeps it out of the news, but it's all in the files we retrieved. They even had cost-benefit analysis on how many deaths are acceptable from schools based on the success rates of their graduates." "No." Katsuki stood from his chair and started pacing. "You're wrong. UA isn't like that. They try to protect us." "Do they?" Izuku crossed his arms and frowned as he watched Katsuki pace. "Mikumo told me about your first training exercise in heroics. Do you really think it was safe to take children with no training and throw them into a scenario where they use their untested quirks against each other? Is it really that far-fetched to think someone could have been permanently disabled or killed? It wasn't. Katsuki knew that because he nearly killed Mikumo. All Might was inexperienced. That was probably an exception. It's not. I can show you the reports. In Japanese hero schools, at least 13 kids are killed or forced to retire from injury every year. The worst year had 63. None of these deaths lead to further investigation of the schools or any changes to make things safer. Izuku stood and placed a hand on Katsuki's shoulder. If that's not enough to convince you that they don't care about children, then look at the fact that Hawks is far from the only child they bought from their family to train as their personal tool. Kaken, do you understand now why we need to change things? Izuku's words seemed to press into Katsuki's mind, urging him to accept what the nerd was saying. Stop it. Stop pushing me, Izuku. I get it. The commission is messed up, but this is a lot to take in. Can't you just give me some time to process? Why do you always have to push? Izuku blinked in clear surprise at Katsuki's reaction. I'm sorry, Kaken. I wasn't even trying to dash. Izuku cut himself off as his brows furrowed in thought. I was so caught up in trying to show you my perspective that I guess I forgot just how much of a change this all has been for you. Change was not a big enough word for all the crap that had happened to Katsuki in the past few months. I don't even know what I'm trying to accomplish anymore. Katsuki hated that his voice sounded broken. He hated feeling like this. Yet, for once, anger did not feel like the right response. I chose to help you. I chose to stay and work with you rather than try to be a hero. Isn't that enough? He'd already broken the law by helping Izuku break into the commission building. What more was expected of him? Oh, Kaken. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was pushing so hard. I promise you don't have to do anything else if you don't want to. Just having you back as my friend is enough. Knowing you don't hate me anymore is enough. Izuku tangled one hand in his curls while the other fidgeted at his side. Ever since things started to change, I felt so alone. For once his voice sounded completely genuine. No leading questions or guilt-tripping. Having you here and having you see my perspective, even a little, helped so much. It gave me something to hold on to of who I was before. Okay. Katsuki stopped pacing, paused, and took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. I get it. I just need some time to process on my own. Izuku gave a small smile. I'll be here if you want to talk. With that, Izuku walked into his bedroom. He pushed too far. Izuku fought to steady his breathing as soon as he was away from Kaken. Was this a side effect of his quirk? Did messing with a person's emotions affect their ability to handle their emotions on their own? Had he messed up Kaken forever? No. Izuku shook his head. He needed to not jump to conclusions. Like Kaken said, he had been through a lot in the past few months. Maybe it just pushed Katsuki to his limit. Regardless, Izuku was determined to not mess with his emotions any more than absolutely necessary. He could not afford to take any more from Katsuki than he already had. To avoid panicking, Izuku decided to work. He pulled out his laptop and plugged in the external hard drive that had a copy of all the files they had stolen. There was a large file with all the covered-up evidence about Endeavor's messed-up home life. Izuku debated on how to use it to bring down the new number one hero. Then there were the dozens of other heroes whose corruption had been hidden. At least the commission took down heroes who worked with villains, even if they did so through unethical means. Time seemed to blur as Izuku fell down the rabbit hole of research. Digging up more and more secrets, and creating half-formed plans filled his mind, until the door burst open and Katsuki charged in. Deku, there's something going on in the news. Izuku abandoned the computer, and followed his friend back to the living room. On the TV, aerial footage showed a massive crater. Where is this? Izuku questioned. Daika City. They're saying it was some big villain fight and the civilians stopped it, but the whole thing seems suspicious. Agreed. Izuku tilted his head in thought. No normal villain could do that level of damage. Oh. Izuku ran over to his phone and looked at the messages he had been ignoring all day. There was a message from the doctor that he had seen earlier telling him not to bother coming in today. Then there were two from Dabi a few minutes later. Dabi, any idea why I was just warped to some random city? Never mind. I see Krusty and the rest. So there was something going on with the rest of the league. Something that involved warping Dabi to where the rest were rather than having him continue working for the doctor. A few hours later there were messages from other members of the league. Twice. Toga is so hurt, why weren't you here? What happened to being friends? Followed immediately by, glad you stayed away and safe, Izuku. Compress, if you have some time, see what you can find out about Rikiya Yatsubashi and his company Denarat. It seems there is more to them than they show the public. Shigaraki, if you want to get out of that stupid apartment, we should have a place to stay soon. There is something going on with the league, too. Probably connected, Izuku muttered after reading the messages. I'll see what I can find out. He sent a message in the group chat to ask what happened, then tucked the phone away while he waited for a response. Katsuki was staring at the TV. Looks like Kamino. At the name of the place, Izuku's eyes shot to look at the destruction on the screen. The crater did bear a striking resemblance to the one left by All For One when he fought against All Might. That was the day the heroes failed to rescue Katsuki. Izuku quickly checked Kaken's emotions with his quirk. At first all he felt was a fuzzy numbness, but when he pressed deeper there was a churning sea of anger, frustration, and sadness. Kaken, are you dash? I'm fine. Katsuki cut him off. Izuku was not convinced, but if Kaken did not want to talk about it, he would not push. Katsuki continued. It's just, All For One is still locked up. So, who did all that? Izuku studied the pictures that were being displayed. It's not scorched, so that rules out Dabi. None of the Nomu are on that level. The only other league member with a highly destructive quirk is Shigaraki. But he's never done anything close to this scale. Maybe you're not the only one who has been keeping your full power to yourself. What do you mean by that? Izuku furrowed his brows in confusion. Oh, come on, Izuku. Katsuki rolled his eyes and turned so they were facing each other. You have a top-tier hacker working with you and you've pretty much taken over the Hero Commission. Have you even told your villain friends any of that? I was waiting for the right time, Izuku protested. Or maybe you all don't trust each other as much as you pretend to. Katsuki's gaze was stony as he waited for Izuku to respond. When Izuku couldn't find anything to say, Kaken continued. Izuku, I'm on your side. I'm your friend and I want to help make this world a better place. Can you say the same for your friends from the League of Villains? For weeks the note had been burning a hole in Mikumo's pocket. The note that showed up with a box containing his hero license, and gear that his own brother had taken a few days prior. Mikumo didn't even know how the box got on campus without suspicion, but he was glad it did. The last thing Mikumo wanted to explain was how Izuku managed to knock him out and steal everything he needed to impersonate a hero. After rereading the same math homework question for the 5th time, Mikumo pulled the note out yet again. His eyes traced over the words that he already knew by heart. Mikumo. Sorry I tricked you like that. I needed to get in somewhere, and your hero license was the only way to do that without hurting anyone. Please don't hate me. Ever since we were diagnosed as quirkless, we've seen all the worst this society has to offer. I'm trying to make things better and build a world where people like us will not suffer for something we have no control over. Maybe someday we can talk and I can explain why I made these choices. I miss you and I wish you were here at my side. Izuku. Being a hero was all they had ever dreamed of when they were little. Mikumo was living that dream. So, why did it feel so empty? Deep down Mikumo knew he should have turned in the note and told the heroes about what happened with Izuku. Yet, he couldn't bring himself to say anything. Maybe next time, I'll save you, he muttered. Izuku! Toga ran to Izuku and pulled him into a hug, rubbing her still heavily bandaged cheek against him. You finally came to visit. Isn't this place amazing? She pulled back to smile up at Izuku. Sorry it took a while. Since I wasn't with you guys when you beat this group, they weren't exactly eager to get me their secret location. Plus, I had a few things to finish up. Izuku glanced around the room and took note of the small cameras in the corners. It looked like privacy was not a thing here. The people who brought me here said something big was happening tomorrow. It's so exciting! Twice proclaimed. Then he added, I'm so bored. Tomorrow we announce the name and organization of our new joined group, Shigaraki informed him. Each of the members who are here from the league are going to be lieutenants. I wanted you to be one as well. Izuku hummed. I'm not sure that I would be welcomed for a position like that. I don't exactly have a strong quirk, and that seems to be a big deal to these people. Forget them, I'm the one in charge, Shigaraki growled. If I say you're good enough, then you're good enough. Even if they were willing to accept that, I have my own things that I'm working on. I'd like to talk to you guys about all that, and some stuff I learned from the doctor. Just not where there are listening ears. He glanced purposely at the cameras. Paranoid much? Dabi snorted. It's only paranoia if they're not out to get you. Izuku snarked back, earning a chuckle from Dabi. This would be so much easier if Kurogiri was still around. Shigaraki grumbled as he stood up. Izuku made a point of removing his earpiece the doctor had given each of them, and setting it on the table. The others glanced at each other before following his example. They all made their way out of the mansion and into the gardens far enough away from the house to avoid the cameras and listening devices. They settled in the shade of a few trees. Just to be safe, Izuku pulled out his phone and activated a program from La Brava. It should deactivate any listening devices within Bluetooth range. This seems over the top even for you. Shigaraki huffed. Ready to talk yet? Izuku nodded. The first thing that I need to talk to you about is the power the doctor offered. Oh? The dry skin around Shigaraki's mouth nearly cracked as he smiled. You know what it is? I do. A frown pulled at Izuku's lips. And I know the rather enormous catch. Everyone sobered up to listen. The doctor has a way to copy and store quirks. To make a long story short, he copied All for One, stored the original quirk, and gave the copy to Sensei before he was captured. The doctor plans to give All for One to you, Shigaraki. That would be amazing. Shigaraki's smile somehow got even bigger. Wait. Toga tipped her head in confusion. Why did he swap the original with the copy? That has to do with the catch. Izuku looked Shigaraki in the eye and tried to convey the seriousness of his words. If an original quirk is transferred, it carries with it some of the original holder's consciousness. The stronger the quirk, the stronger the consciousness. So what? I would have Sensei in my head? No. Worse. Izuku resisted the urge to use his quirk to convey his emotions. This needed to be Shigaraki's choice. If he manipulated it, Shigaraki might just change his mind as soon as Izuku was away. Sensei would override your personality and take over your body. You would be nothing more than a vessel for him. There was silence for a few seconds before Dabi scoffed. And the doctor just told you all of this? Not directly. Dr. Ijiko likes to talk about his work and brag about his accomplishments. He told me all the pieces that I mentioned at different times and I put them together. So, you could be wrong, Compress pointed out. Technically, yes. But I highly doubt it. Sensei knew his body was weakening after his injuries from All Might. He has already used quirks to live for hundreds of years. Finding a way to cheat death by transferring to a new body is very much in character. That part is true. Shigaraki looked far more thoughtful than Izuku had ever seen him. But I still need power to achieve my goals. Power, yes. But it doesn't have to be a quirk. Izuku was so thankful that Kaken pushed him to have something to offer. I hope that you all see me as proof that quirks aren't everything. Psychological warfare can be very powerful. You gain Gigantomachia's support, and your quirk has evolved to be incredibly powerful. Plus you have this new organization under your control. But I've also been busy. While you were busy, I gained control of the head of the Hero Public Safety Commission. How? Spinner demanded. Izuku shrugged. A little hacking, a lot of blackmail, and the ability to end her life with the touch of a button. Toga squealed. I always knew you were amazing, Izuku. Does this have anything to do with those two you had me break out of prison? You broke some people out of prison? Compress sounded offended behind his mask as he faced Toga. Why did you not tell any of us about this? Toga stuck out her tongue. It was a special favor for Izuku. I don't see how that was any of your business. One of the people we broke out was probably the best hacker in Japan, possibly the world. She has been working with me since I got them out. You've been doing a lot of things without telling us, Izuku. Shigaraki's suspicion pressed at the edge of Izuku's awareness. What are you really up to? All eyes were back on Izuku as everyone waited for his answer. You're right. I am up to something. I want to change this society and make it realize that people are people and they have value regardless of their quirk. People should not be looked down on for something they can't change, and they shouldn't be taught that their only value is based on whether they have the strength to be a powerful hero. I'm going to tear down the hero and villain system. Well, aren't you ambitious? Compress chuckled. Twice said, I think it's a great plan. No way it will work. Tearing down the corrupt hero society as Stain tried to do. Spinner muttered so quietly it almost seemed he was talking to himself. Care to share how you plan to make that happen? Dalby leaned against a nearby tree with his arms crossed. I don't want to go into the details right now. But you should know that I don't plan on working with the Meta Liberation Army. I want you guys to decide for yourselves if you want to side with them or with me if it came down to it. Izuku shrugged and turned back toward the mansion. Take some time to think about it. If you decide to join me, come to my apartment a week from today. So, are you planning to make a move anytime soon? Kaken asked from where he was sprawled on the couch. I'm comfy. Izuku answered from the beanbag chair he had been in since lunch. His eyes scanned the pages of the notebook he was working in. His plans and ideas were scrawled in a shorthand that was hopefully unintelligible to anyone else. I meant, are you planning to make another move in your master plan to take over the world? I am not planning to take over the world. Izuku pouted. Just change society in Japan. If you say so. Kaken shrugged and grabbed the remote. I won't be surprised if by the end of this you're sitting on some gaudy golden throne with the rulers of all the nations bowing at your feet. The mental image made Izuku chuckle. Will you at least be there beside me as my chief advisor and bodyguard? Kaken wrinkled his nose. Sounds boring. I'd rather be in charge of your army or something. Then I would at least get to fight. That got Izuku to pause and study his friend. You miss the action, don't you? I haven't even used my quirk in months. Exercising whenever you're out of the house is the only thing that has kept me from going completely soft. Kaken sat up and rolled his shoulders. If I don't get to blow something up soon, I might actually go insane. Izuku huffed, both amused and exasperated. You sound like some sort of pyromaniac when you say it like that. Hey! You've been using that big nerdy brain of yours this whole time. You have no idea how boring it is just sitting around. I'm not built to be sedentary. I'm a man of action. A boy of action, maybe, Izuku said with a smirk and earned a glare from Kaken. I might have a few ideas about how you can get some action. It depends somewhat on how things go tonight. What's happening tonight? Kaken lifted an eyebrow curiously. Oops. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly as he felt a spark of irritation in Kaken. I guess I forgot to tell you. Some members of the League of Villains might be coming over tonight. Damn it, Izuku. A little more warning would be nice. Kaken stood up and started pacing. How do you plan on explaining the fact I'm not locked up? Did you even think about how they're going to react? I have, Izuku insisted. I mentioned that I have my own plans. I told them to come tonight if they wanted to work with me. If you don't want them to know you're working with me, then you can stay in the bedroom. But I was thinking that if they knew you were on my side, it might lead to opportunities to at least spar and use your quirk. Are you trying to use my boredom against me? Kaken was glaring, but there was no real anger behind it. Is it working? Izuku gave an innocent smile. A myriad of emotions swirled through Kaken as he debated. Izuku did not bother trying to interfere this time. He let Kaken think it over on his own. Fine. I'll stay out here, but if any of those creeps try anything, I'm blowing them up. Thanks, Kaken! Now he just had to wait and see who was willing to show up.